Oh my gosh. So I am so excited. I have been looking forward to this conversation for 9 bajillion years, mainly
Long time.
because it's a long freaking time.
Did you just call
Uh,
me old?
no, I am calling me old, but I am so excited to be having this conversation with you today. You are my very first guest on Badass Bytes, so power to the people and all that good stuff. Today, my friend, you and I are going to be talking about badassery in general, but then also in particular, we are going to talk about a particular trait of badasses that I lovingly call keeping it real. But before we kind of like dive into all of that awesome, juicy stuff, speak yourself into the world for those folks who might not know who you are.
Oh man. Well, first of all, I'm super pumped to be here having this conversation and having it with you. I love whenever we get to hang out. So this is a lot of fun. Hey DTK, what is going on? So me, wow. I kind of like to think of myself as being counterintuitive. I think the people I work with are counterintuitive. I've got an eclectic background, but most of us do. Father, husband, son, brother, entrepreneur, former, infantry officer, started companies, sold companies, had things that were successful, had things that were total flops, and along the way have kind of advised people and a little bit of coaching, but I think of it more as advising, being a trusted advisor and a thought partner with people who are kind of in it shoulder to shoulder. I never think about myself as a person who's kind of coming down from the mountain with the glow behind them and here's all the wisdom, but as much as like I'm grinding through this stuff, and if you're grinding through it too, let's figure it out together, because I'll be ridiculously transparent. Some people have said transparent to a fault. I
love it.
So love it. That's me.
And Kelly, thank you so much for your kind words. Nice to see you here. And DTK also, thank you for showing up. So what you and I are going to be talking about today are all things badassery. So just to kind of take a couple steps back, who is, according to me, because it's Badass Bytes, so I can say who they are, who is a modern badass? A modern badass is someone I like to define as someone who is high will, high skill, high performing, goes 80 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone without always checking to see if their people are strapped in for the ride, let alone if their people are interested in going on this adventure in the first place. They are doing audacious things in this world, or they have ideas of the audacious things they could be doing in this world. And I am so excited for them and by them that I can't help but be called to serve them. And so the reason why I'm so interested in them is that I think that they have, I believe, not even think, that they have an outsized impact on all of us once they finally get out of their own freaking way. And so I have written a blog post. There it is, the 14 traits of modern badass leaders. And the one that you and I are going to be talking about today is something I love to call keeping it real. And so as we dive into this, let me share what that definition is for you all so that we can kind of level set. Okay, keeping it real. You're easily bored, and it's obvious when you're bored. You can't phone it in like other people do. If you're not passionate about it, you want no part of it. And, one of the things, Kevin, you and I have talked about is this unwillingness to tolerate that which does not interest us, our unwillingness to engage in that which does not serve us. And I'm speaking, it's true just generally as people, but I'm also speaking as people who are entrepreneurs, or they're, it's a funded startup, or they're scaling their business, or they are head of a division of a much larger company. Time and attention are extremely expensive. And one of the things that I think serve badasses really well is when they really lean into the recognizing what they don't give two craps about and what they do give two craps about, to help them make decisions about how they want to go forward. So tell me why this one landed for you. You chose this topic. I'm curious to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, so it was funny when when you sent me the list, my first reaction was I looked at all of them, and maybe it was a little bit of FOMO kicking in, but I was like, oh, all of them. Okay, well, I can pick one. So I think the reason this one jumped out at me is that I immediately saw a track record, and I looked at a track record for me in a different light. And that is that, and here's like the counterintuitive piece. When I tell most people that I was not a good student, they go, really? I said, oh yeah, I'll go, let me go back to 8th grade when I would sit in English class and I would deliberately not read the book, but just participate in the conversations in class and see how well I could do on the written exams. Right? Pretty well. I mean, I think a B- is pretty solid when you never read the book.
Right. Not bad.
So the thing was, and I would constantly hear, why don't you apply yourself if you just applied yourself? My parents knew it was an aptitude thing, but I learned really quickly, like I either care or I don't, and there is no in between.
Yeah.
And the thing for me, carrying this forward now into the work that we do, is that I experience this myself. I know other high achievers do as well, that all of a sudden that high achiever moniker, all of a sudden, well, I'm not totally a high achiever. I mean, I didn't crush it in school. I didn't do well at this. I didn't do well at that. It's always easy to go and find the things that are missing versus saying, I've got this intuitive governor that goes, hey man, put your energy. It is trying to lead me to put my energy against those things at which I excel. And I think that is true for most high achievers, yet we are battling a myriad of different messages that may have been imprinted for ages. Or on the other end of the spectrum are those that are trying to do everything well. And it's diluting where you can put your weight to bear going inch wide, mile deep.
Yeah, I love that you just said inch wide, mile deep, because we don't, it's like these little, it's like an energy leak, or it's an attention leak, or whatever kind of leak you want to call it, but there's a leak to it, and the leaks are incredibly expensive. And so when I think about the types of clients that I have, and I know about the types of clients that you have, these leaks of attention, prodigiously expensive. And there's this battle that leaders often have of, well, I should be doing this. So there's like this sense of obligation, or what is the acceptable to other people thing that I should or could be doing. And then there's the instinctually, strategically high opportunity thing that I'm being called to do. And there's always this tension. And I have found that the really successful people are really good at establishing these boundaries of, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I will farm out. This is why I have, I don't know, a technology team. This is why I have an analytics team. This is why, I have an outsourced CFO, or this is why I have all of these people that do all of these other things, so that I don't get distracted from this main thing that I do. And it can be extremely polarizing when someone says, I don't give a crap about this particular thing. I would much rather have someone else do it. It can be off-putting to some.
Well, it also can be. I'm going to try to let me take a second to figure out how to say this in the most streamlined way possible. In many cases, if we are highly critical of ourselves, we can start to look at those flaws in a way that we need to overcompensate. And here's what I mean, particularly I've experienced this. It's funny, in this conversation, I'm realizing I've experienced this multiple times in my life. And I am sure there are other entrepreneurs who have, where we look at the areas, particularly if you look at this through the framework of, oh my gosh, the book's escaping me right now. If you look at this through a rocket fuel kind of framework, where you have an integrator and you have a visionary. You are a visionary. I am 100. I take that test and I was like, I was on the extended scale. I'm a visionary.
Yeah.
The problem becomes if all of a sudden you start to realize and you say, okay, in order for me to lean into that, I need to go find an integrator and start to look at that as somehow or another you're lacking in that area, and you go to seek a partner. Business partner, somebody that you're giving equity away, somebody that you're giving away, that you're diluting the power around driving the vision forward, and it can create problems for you. It can create massive problems. There's an inner story that you're creating for yourself that's disempowering for you as a creator, as a visionary. And there's also the inequity and everything that it creates in the structure of the organization that's less than efficient for the decision making. And again, for me, it does come back to looking as an individual, every individual looking at, where do I unapologetically want to step into? And you can take this outside the framework of starting your own business as well. I've seen this for years as a headhunter, and then also working with those in the C-suite who are switching roles, and many times finding themselves in this place at 20, 25, 30 years of experience and saying, oh my God, I do all these things well, and I need to be the master of all these. No, you don't. You're at this beautiful place in life where it's actually not only intrinsically beneficial for you to find the thing you want to crush and, again, go inch wide, mile deep on, it's also extrinsically beneficial because you go, hey, that's the lever I can pull. And yeah, you're going to put me on retainer for $30,000 a month to do it. And it's probably going to take me about 5 hours a month to do it for you. They don't need to worry about that. But here's what your ROI looks like when you let me play in this one area of your business.
Precisely. I'm so glad you said that. The upside of being extremely clear of where your gift is or where the opportunity lives. So, it can be in terms of what you're good at versus what not you're good at. But then if we were to make this a little bit broader, is, if you are mapping out whatever you believe your business strategy is for the, next 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, whatever, it's also, let's be incredibly, brutally honest about what appears to be better for us as a business versus what might be tempting to us. Kind of like this idea of scarcity. Well, like I'm going to play a lower level game because that's safer to me, whereas your intuition might be saying, no, that's not quite right. And so there's that tension that lives there as well. I remember, and I got in so much trouble for this, so this is why I'm going to tell the story.
I love those stories.
So I was working for a very large corporation. I want to say that this is like 15, 18 years ago. And I was given this really juicy big project. It was product development for a new credit card product, and there would be millions and millions of dollars not only set aside for the actual development of it, but then the actual marketing of it. So I put together the business plan. I created the low, medium, high options. The upsides and the downsides for all of the options. And then the CFO of the entire corporation to me said, okay, great. Thank you so much for this work. And he was sincere. He said, I only have money to give you for the low option. And I turned to him and I said, with all due respect, don't give me this money at all. Kill this project, put it somewhere else in the organization where you know you're going to get a better bang for your buck. Now, the gentleman that I worked for was extremely angry with me because that meant that was millions of dollars that our, part of the world was not going to get. But I'm like, dude, let's think about this holistically. It would have been setting fire to money to have like that low, watered down option. Let us be really clear about what's going to work and what's not going to work and move forward. Now, political suicide, but it was still the right thing to do.
Yes. And I would say too, if you want to bring it down to your former boss, like, hey man, this is a false positive for you because this work is not going to matter and it is not going to move the needle on your reputation inside the organization.
Yeah.
So find the thing that you're going to do, the thing that you're going to put your weight to bear against for the next 12, 18 months or 3 months or whatever the lifeline of that project is, where at the end of it, you're able to go, hey, you want more of giving me $1 and making 1,000? Then let's talk about me having a larger scope and role. Build that for where you're going next. No different in setting up anything inside your business. No different if you're going to pitch investors to get, but that's what everybody wants to see ROI. You should, as an individual, want to see ROI on being able to do less better and to have more impact and more. I'll use, this is on the front of all my books: freedom, impact, and profitability. That for me. That dictates everything that I look at doing. Everything, personally and professionally, because it's like if it doesn't fit those things, there's no.
Yeah, it's like
and it's a fail-safe for me against this very topic we're talking about. Yeah. Because if I don't want to do it, it's not going to hit. It's not going to hit any of those. It's not going to hit any of them.
I love that you brought that up. I have found, and I think this has been your experience as well, that with my clients, me, anyone else, when there is a misalignment with the things that matter the most to you, that's when things start to go to hell in a handbasket. So I have 5 values. It's freedom, truth, justice, creativity, and loyalty. And if anything, I have decided that anything I do on a go forward basis has to be aligned with at least one of those things for me to be a hell yes for it. Anything that starts to feel yucky for me, I'm like, why is this feeling yucky? Yeah. What is this fighting against? And I just actually, earlier this week, I had this thing that I was grappling with for the last couple of days. I said, why is this bugging me? And finally today I said, I know. It's because it is not aligned with freedom, truth, justice, creativity, or loyalty. And that's why it was bumming me out. And so just, being crystal clear, being really honest about what's worth your time. I was joking with you earlier today that I wanted to make a reference to Elaine's Spongeworthy episode on Seinfeld. And honestly, it kind of feels like that. And for those who haven't seen that episode, I won't go into it, just kind of find the wiki. and we won't cover that here, but it really is kind of like, is this Spongeworthy? is this worth my time?
Yeah. And I think that's that too, at the risk of sounding preachy about this, that's a really big inflection point to be aware of when you're shifting from, particularly when you go out on your own and you start your own organization, whether it's you as a solopreneur or you're grafting out a startup, and coming out of, larger corporate environment where you need to determine where your time should be spent and how it should be spent. And I'll take this, if you take it all the way down to being out as an individual, when you deliberately start creating, I would submit that we're all creating everything that's happening in our lives, but when you're looking at this through the lens of creating your own role, your own organization, your own construct in which you live on a daily basis. This is why this topic, again, becomes so important. There is a point, and I've watched this for years and years. I've experienced it. You may have experienced it. countless entrepreneurs I've worked with have experienced it, where all of a sudden they've got this friction with their business, or they're like, I just don't like the business I have. You keep digging and you keep digging on the layers. And the bottom line is you've created this construct that you now live in, and you can no longer blame anybody else. So it is the purest form of self-loathing, that you have created a construct that you knowingly and willingly go into every day, and you hate it. And you hate it. And why? Because, well, in this corporation, they had me doing X, Y, and Z. Well, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Find somebody else to do it. Or better yet, with a lot of those things, try not doing them, and you will find out how many of them don't matter. They don't matter. Who is it truly serving? Who's it truly serving?
Yeah. And, it's the opportunity cost too, right? So there's an opportunity cost for doing something, but then there's also the opportunity cost of doing nothing. And so all of the stuff that we may spend our time on that we really don't give that much care, we don't have that much care for, like what is it that we're missing? So, for example, if someone who doesn't realize that they could be the next Richard Branson is, I don't know, tooling around doing whatever they're doing instead of allowing themselves to pursue their passion to be the next Richard Branson, what are we missing? Or the next Elon Musk, or the next Steve Jobs, or the next, Sarah Blakely, all of those things, the next Warren Buffett. When we have decided that we won't declare what our boundaries are, that we have decided that we are not going to be passionately for something, and also being really clear about what we're passionately against. It doesn't mean anti. It's I am against spending my time or wasting my attention on this thing that really, at the end of the day, has very little upside for me, my company, humanity, whomever. And I have found the really successful leaders are the ones that are really good at setting what those boundaries are.
Yeah, and to build on something you just said, I do think it's fine to say what you are against and frame it out in the context of what you were for.
Yeah.
Right? That I am, because I'm a believer that when we focus on the things we want to move away from or we don't want in our lives, if we're not doing that in the context of what we're moving towards or what we are creating, then it requires us to constantly go back and create that thing that we want to move away from, which then gets us right back in it. If nothing else, our energy and our thoughts and everything, we're not actively creating where we want to go. We're once again recreating where we don't want to go.
Precisely. It's kind of like, what I like to say is you can't boil the ocean, but you can boil a series of kettles. And so if we have everything as a possibility, we are trying to boil an ocean. Good luck.
Oh, and everything is a possibility. If we're as this fits into that broader framework of, and I know you subscribe to this as well as I do, of living a created life versus a reported upon life. Everything is a possibility, and we need to figure out what we are truly committed to. What possibilities? You're first committing to living in a world of possibilities, and then second, you're committing to putting your energy against specific possibilities. And that again comes right back to what we're talking about here, which is saying this: I know I can do all those things, and some of them I can do better than others, but let me take a step back and stop using this and start thinking from here on what it is that fulfills me. What is my intuition telling me I should go do? And then the how all sorts it out. I was messaging back and forth with a guy I've known for years, and he and his, actually, I'm not sure if he's married or if it's his girlfriend, but they're in Brazil nonetheless. And we were talking about his business, and he said, I've been doing this, but that just feels like more of a grind than what I'm doing now. And that seems to be working better. And not to say that the other thing doesn't work. And this, for anybody out there who's getting bombarded with market this way, start a book, no, start a podcast, no, create this $2 offer and ladder people up to sell them $50,000 a year, whatever the case may be. I said, hey man, can I tell you? Because I've tried all those things. They all work. They all work. Again, it's the doing part that is not the problem. It's when you're doing that and it's not coming from the place of who you be and how you want to show up in the world and what you want to create for yourself. That again, just like you fundamentally create a business that you hate. And every day that you step into that, and you as the CEO of you in the business step into it, you're saying, that's okay. It's okay to be miserable in the thing that you created and create something that makes you miserable.
And what you're modeling for the people that work for you and you're modeling for your clients is it's okay if you hate this too. So we're all going to be miserable together. And
those high achievers that are aware of that are not coming to work for you. Or if they do, once they figure it out, they will not be there long.
Yeah. I mean, no one wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait, whether virtually or post-COVID in person, I can't wait to go to my crap sandwich of a job. No, no one says that, right? Especially these high performers. But when you say, look, I am really passionate about X or Y or Z, or this is what I think the upside is for a business because this is what we're really good at. And you're able to clearly articulate that for your investors, your board, your team, whomever, and they're like, hell yeah, sign me up. Then, you're going further faster than what you had even anticipated because you were declarative about something really specific and important to you that you were really passionate about, as opposed to saying, thank you, sir, may I have another crap sandwich? Like, I don't want to do that. Like, you don't want to do that.
I'm not doing it. No. I'm not. And I don't believe, and it's interesting. I was having this conversation with my wife the other night about someone she knows and talking about their behavior. And they are someone who is totally a high achiever and has achieved some phenomenal things at a relatively young age. And underlying all that, I said, without ever having a conversation with this person, I can guarantee you that part of the story they have told themselves is that this behavior that you're seeing is key in them achieving that outcome. And therefore, they need to continue to commit to this behavior. And again, this behavior can fit anything. It can fit the context of what we're talking about, anything else, that this behavior then results in that. And it becomes an either or. It becomes a yes, no. It becomes a positive and negative versus an and. And it's possible that you could achieve more by doing less or doing differently.
Yeah.
And opening yourself up to those, that everything is a possibility. And the possibility stems from the commitment to being that way. But this at the core, every one of those 14 traits is when you're out of alignment with those, you are out of alignment with being who you be.
Yeah. And there's possibility and then there's also probability. And so why wouldn't we lean into the possibilities that have higher probabilities for us? So something that's higher probability for me may not be the same for you, but let's at least be honest about it. And let's at least encourage the people that work for us, our investors, so on and so forth, to also give us that feedback. If we've got a blind spot, let's have other people feel confident enough to speak truth to power to say, hey, you are going a little bit too wide. If you were to narrow, or if you were to pivot, what would be possible, or what could you benefit from in that? And so being sure, there's a million possibilities. Before I reached my full height of 5'4", it could have been probable that I would reach into the top shelf, but once it became evident that I was not going to exceed 5'4", it is not probable. A for effort for me to try to reach, and I could, I suppose, climb on the countertop at the ripe old age of 51 to reach the top shelf, but I don't want to. So what are the things that if we were really honest, we could create? I know that you have a hard stop coming up in a few minutes. What are some final thoughts or tips that you can give to folks about this keeping it real point that would be interesting or useful for them?
I think the biggest one is to get curious, and get curious when you start to think about what you really want to do and how you really want to show up and what you really want to be. This is an inflection point I've worked at with people, particularly with one of my companies since 2008, around you find yourself at this juncture after 25, 30 years experience, and you can keep going after more of the same. But if you've been laid off, if a new CEO came in and said, thank you, I've got my own team, you've got a moment to really reconcile, decide what do you really want to do. And what's interesting is talking about in the world of possibilities, what immediately starts to populate is what you've seen. And really, we can forget about where it's come from, but the beliefs that you have built around what is possible. And getting curious about that. If they're at odds with the things that we hear people say it all the time, I'd like to do this, but I need to be realistic. What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a buzzkill.
Is it right? I mean, it's what, and I used to always say, like, listen, unless you tell me you want to go from fry chef to astronaut, and I'm not even saying it's not a possibility. I've never experienced that. I don't know the path there. I don't know how to unpack that, but it's very, very difficult for me to see that there's not a way to be able to evolve, pivot, unlock that thing that you've shoved down that you really want to step into, or the possibility that you see. But it really starts with us. We can get caught up in market research and all this other stuff, but if you can't see it, you can't lead other people to it.
Yeah, I love that. And the yes and that I would offer there is, who do you care about? And whatever it is that you do, whether it is that you're making fries or you are, an aeronautical engineer doing all the interesting, fabulous things. Who is it that you're serving? Why is it that you're serving them? And what is it that you are best able to do to serve those people? And where you're likely going to have the most success is the intersection of head and heart. So your brain is engaged, and also your passions are engaged. And don't be afraid to be polarizing and edgy and saying no to opportunity, no to people, no to clients, and also no to some team members you might have that maybe have served you up until this point in time, but that there are divergent paths happening. And maybe it's time for the two of you to separate from one another as well, because what you're trying to accomplish is different from what they may be gifted at.
And don't be surprised when some of those things that come exceptionally easy to you, because it's your zone of genius and where it flows, that's where you're supposed to be, and that
precisely
you will very, very easily discount those things because they come naturally to you.
Yeah, it's what's that called? Curse of knowledge or curse of expertise. Because I can do it, it must mean that everyone can do it, so it must be devalued.
Yeah, and I've seen this on LinkedIn a few times too. It's sort of the next step in it, in starting to own it, is, well, the reason this is going to cost you X isn't that it takes me Y amount of hours, but it's because it's 30 years of experience of blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of having this conversation with a client, and he started to echo that. And I said, let's throw that out, because that to me is thou doth protest too much, and you're really hiding your shame and your guilt and all this other BS behind what you're going to charge. Let's get down to brass tacks. This is how I decide what I'm charging and how I charge and the clients I'm looking for. Is that, yeah, there's my function on my side of the equation around what I charge.
Right.
Honestly, nobody cares about that except for me.
Right.
The importance to any client or potential
upside.
client is, here's what I'm charging, and where I want to play with you is that has exponential return with what
Right.
you are going to do with it.
Right. It's
So if you don't
the conversations
it,
about
yeah,
the
you and I
10x.
had that chat about something you posted. Like, if you don't see it, if you don't believe it's possible, if it's not actually, if you want to like go full rational mind with me and say that it's not possible, like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to argue with you. What I'm telling you is, going back to what you were saying earlier, like, I want to know, you're going back to that example you used coming out of corporate America. I want to know this investment to you, what it represents. You're going all in. Right. Because at the end of a 3, 6, 12-month engagement, if you're nonplussed about what we've created together,
precisely,
I'm gonna be really upset with myself that I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I'm not even going to be
100%.
upset with you because I created this. I allowed this to happen. I am truly going to be upset with myself. So this is a fail-safe.
Oh yeah, 100%. And whomever it is that you work with, coach, advisor, consultant, whomever, it's you're not retaining that person so much as that you're making a bet on the upside of the investment that you've made. And if you've been really clear about what it is that your needs are, and you're really clear about what it is that you're trying to do, then you will choose that person who will help you as you get to that 10x goal, whatever that 10x, 5x, 20x, whatever that might be individually for you, as long as you're honest about it. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, is be honest. Have a clear idea of what your boundaries are and what your passions are, and people can only respect that degree of clarity and transparency. If people are prodigiously lazy, make it easy for them to understand who you are so that they know how it is that they can engage with you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Kevin, rock star.
Thanks, my friend.
So appreciate this conversation today. People looking to connect with Kevin more, there is his website. If you want to drop him a love note, this is his email address. If you'd like to drop me a love note, if you'd like to drop me a love note, this is my email address. But that is it for today's Badass Bytes. Kevin, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Bye.